I grew up on a farm, on a mixed farm. We had cattle and grain and chickens and everything that they have on a mixed farm.
At the time of this recording, Dick Winters is 75 years of age and still a working cowboy. He's been cowboying most of his life, a cowboy, an historian, an archivist, and he's also a cowboy turned poet. His parents gave him a strong work ethic on the farm where he grew up. They were of Mennonite descent and they settled at Sanford, Manitoba, in and around the area of Winkler and St. Jean, about 20 miles south of Winnipeg. He easily reflects about his experiences, and when I asked him about his early days, we always got to talking about cowboying.
I always cowboyed, like even when we were, when we were on the grain farm, we had horses, we rode, and we used the horses to work cattle, and so we were always considered ourselves to be able to do cowboy work. And cowboy work is simply handling cattle and working with horses, and that's what it really consists of. It's not being in the movies or having gunfights like Hollywood projects it to be. It's just working cattle and...
Working cattle. Well, it seems to be a little bit more than that.
It's quite a skill, or I don't know if you call it, I guess a skill, to be able to handle cattle that, wild cattle that actually haven't been handled. It's a real satisfaction to be able to do that, to be able to have a horse that you can rope a cow off of and subdue her and do whatever you have to give her to, to doctor her or whatever. And that always, to me, was always a very satisfying thing. Like when you start out, the horse is probably afraid of the rope, and the horse is probably afraid of the cow, and then you put the rope on the cow, and then you really got a problem. You've got them tied together. So to be able to take a horse and have it function, to work a cow is a big challenge. Anybody that ever tried that knows it's a big challenge.
Dick has taken to the life he's always wanted quite well. Handling his cattle on horseback puts him at peace with his surroundings. And although not every task is as peaceful and serene as it may appear, Dick is positive and up to the challenge, and strives to make the best of all situations. Dick is truly living the cowboy's dream.
Well, I always liked to be out in the country. I liked cattle and livestock and horses. I always had a great love for horses, and I was good with horses. Like I understand horses, and I understand livestock, and I kind of understand people.
Liking to work with cattle and having a good horse is what it takes to survive. Dick takes pride in his ranching operation. He has a good sense of humor, good horse sense, and a proper understanding of caring. He's always provided a good home for his horses.
This is horse harness. This is team harness for horses, eh? Like I have horses that I drive, and that's harness that I use for horses that I drive horses, eh? So yeah, that's all harness. This is a bridle, and it goes on the horse's head. The bit goes in the horse's mouth. The lines, you take the lines and you control the horse with the lines, eh? And the bit is in the mouth to control the horse, eh? So that's the way that's about all the equipment you need. That and a saddle. And the big thing with a horse is he has a fear of you, first of all. because he thinks that, he doesn't know whether to trust you or not. So what you have to do is establish a trust between you and the horse. And you do that by just handling the horse. Is you got to be kind of part of the horse. You got to be kind of with him and move with him, eh? And when you have no saddle at all, you soon learn that. Because if you don't go with him, you'll be on the ground, eh? And that's kind of the way it works, yeah.
To this day, Dick continues to use horses on his cattle ranch. He finds them reliable, and he works well with them, and there's always work to be done on a ranch.
Well, we still use the horses to check cattle, and we use the horses to handle cattle and to gather the cattle up. I've done all the things that cowboys do. Like I rope cattle and I ride horses and I run my own cattle ranch. I always had horses, from the time that I got out of school, and I always went out of my way to own horses or to use horses.
Now, life on the farm hasn't always been the way it is today, especially when it comes to field work. Dick has taken the time to replicate some model prototypes of the way they used to farm, and that he's built to scale and hid away in his own private collection.
This is what they call an overshot stacker. This is a replica of an overshot stacker. Now, the way this thing works is the hay is mowed and raked into windrows, and it's pushed up here with a horse sweep. It's two horses on a sweep, and they push the hay up onto this bed here, and then to put the hay on the stack, you have a horse hooked on here, and this goes up and throws it on the stack. This is called an overshot stacker. That's the way we used to hay when we...
Did you make that model?
Yeah, I made it. I built this just for fun one time. And that's the way the thing works. The hay is pushed up on here. The haystack is being formed here. And the way it works is you just hook a horse on here and you pull this up, and it throws the hay up on the stack, and then you let it down for the next round, of course. That's the way the thing works, yeah.
So that does one stack at a time?
Yeah, or we just keep moving it, like you just keep moving it. You build a stack here, and then you hook the team on it, and you take it to the next stack, and you go through the same process, eh? Did it take me long to make this? Well, I was just tinkering away at it in the wintertime for something else to do.
Have you done other stuff like that?
What?
Have you done other stuff like that?
Yeah, I got a horse sweep here. This is, if we can get it moved over there without it falling apart. Now this is what they call a sweep, a horse sweep. And the way it works is you have two horses on here like this. You have long lines that you're driving with, and the man that's running the sweep stands on here, and he goes down the windrow, and the hay piles up here. It piles up, and then you push it on the front of that stacker. You push the hay onto the front of that stacker, then you lift the stacker up and it dumps it onto the haystack. That's the way it was built. That's the way it operated. Now this here hay sweep, the man would be standing on here and he'd be driving that team, and if he wanted to lift the teeth, he would just walk back on this plank, and that would lift the teeth up. And then he would go then he'd pull into the stacker, and the hay would be pushed onto the teeth of that stacker, and then he would back his team up. He would back his team up off the stacker. The hay would stay on the basket there, and then they'd pull it up and dump it on the stack. That's the way it worked. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was used all through the West wherever there was hay, and oh yeah, like all the hay in them days was done with horses. Like it was you mowed it with the horses, then you raked it with a dump rake. I got a dump rake here too. I might as well show you. Okay, now this is what they call a dump rake. There's a team of horses hooked on here, and there's a pedal that lifts these teeth up, and you rake the mowed hay and you dump it in long windrows. Like you just keep tripping that, and you make a long windrow, just kind of the same as they do with the hay bind now, or with whatever they cut with. And then you come with this horse sweep and you push that hay up to that stacker, and then you go through that process where you push it onto the teeth, and then the stacker dumps it on the...
These three work in tandem then. I mean, they're a set.
Yeah, there's a mower that you pull with the horses, and it cuts the hay. Then you rake it with this dump rake, and then you push it up to the stacker with the sweep, and then you put it on the stacker, and then you dump it on the stack. And there's a man on the back here building the stack. He builds the stack as you go up, and you usually put about 10 tons of hay in the stack. That was the way they used to do it. I worked on this stuff, yeah. Oh yes, I've done it, yeah. Too long. Too long, for a matter of fact. Well, I guess I'm an old timer, because I'm 75. I guess you call that I'm a senior anyway. Yeah, well, I just made these models because, like a lot of people nowadays, if you tell them that this is the way, and there was hay, like all over this whole country, this hay country, the hay was put up that way. And it was put up there for many, many years. That's the way people hayed. And but if you tell people now, you say, well, this is the way that we used to put up hay, they just look at you like, say, yeah, where do you come from? but we did for many years. We used to put up, 30 10-ton stacks on this place here, and we stacked it all like this with the overshot stacker and the horse sweep and all that stuff. As time went on, they changed, like they hooked a tractor on the dump rake, and then they had a sweep on the front of a tractor, but they still used the old overshot stacker for many years. They used the overshot stacker, and it was kind of a good way to put up hay. And the great part about it was that when you broke something on this thing, you didn't have to go to the town for parts, because you could just go and cut a tree out of the bush and fix your stacker up for the day. So yeah, times have changed a lot. Like exactly, yeah. Exactly. It's like in my poem, Drowned Drifting in 40 Below. I was doing that one time for some kids, and they said, well, if she wanted the doctor, why didn't they just take the cell phone and call him? I said there was no cell phone. So that's the way times have changed, yeah. Times have changed, yeah. There's a branding iron right there. Well, the way it works is when you're branding cattle, you heat this branding iron in a fire, usually most people do it now with a propane torch, but we used to do it with a wood fire, and we would try to have the best thing to heat a branding iron with a wood fire is a diamond willow. If you can cut dry, hard diamond willow, it'll give you a nice hot fire, eh? and what you do is you put the iron in the fire, and you have the handles. You have the handles like this out of the fire, and the calves are gathered in a pen, and you have possibly 2 riders, and they rope the cattle. They rope the calves by the hind feet, and then they take a galley on their horn, and they drag the calf over to the branding fire. They roll him on his side, and 2 guys hold him down, and they stamp the brand on him. And they probably vaccinate him. They brand him, vaccinate him, and the bull calves, they castrate at the same time. It's all done. It only takes, to do a calf only takes, I don't know, a couple of, maybe 2.5 minutes really before they turn him loose again. Eh? Then they just flip the rope off the back feet, and he goes back with his mother. Eh? Now a lot of people use ear tags to mark their cattle, and they put the ear tag goes in it's punched in the cow's ear, eh? And or the cattle be sear, and that ear tag is a plastic tag. But the big problem with plastic tags is many times the cattle lose them tags, like they catch them in the fence, or they rub them off. They rub against each other, rub the ear tags off. Now, if you brand an animal, that mark will be on there his entire life. That you can even skin him, and you can see the brand on the back side of the hide. So it's a very permanent mark once you've branded him. Now the big change in branding now is they do what they call freeze branding. And freeze branding is the same process, except that your branding iron is put in liquid nitrogen instead of a fire. You have the branding iron in a pail of liquid nitrogen, and what it does is it cools this iron to, I don't know, I guess about 400 degrees minus or whatever. So then to brand the animal, you clip the hair, and you put a wash of alcohol on the spot where you're going to brand, and then you hold the iron on for 30 seconds. And what the result of it is that the hair follicles where that iron touches, the hair turns white, and so you have a mark on the cattle the same as a hot brand, only the hair is white, and that'll stay on there. That'll be permanent for the life of the animal, eh? And a lot of people do that now.
Life on the farm is good for Dick today. Over the years, Dick Winters has become a cowboy storyteller and poet, performing and reciting at various poetry gatherings in the area. Dick doesn't take written material on stage. He says that over the years, it's been getting harder for him to read it. Fortunately, he still maintains a good memory, and it hasn't been a problem. Dick's positive optimism, his perceptive insight, and living in the moment brings his poetry to paper, and it doesn't hurt to have a good memory.
I was always fascinated by some poetry, not all poetry, but I like poems that rhymed, and I like sort of adventure poems, and but I don't know. I seem to have and I don't ever remember trying to like deliberately setting out to write poems. I think most of the time the poems just sort of popped into my head, and they keep going around and around till I wrote them down. Eh? But I don't really set out to. I can't remember ever, deliberately setting out to write poems. I used to carry a book with me all the time because if I was out, say, mowing hay or just riding, I don't know, a poem would come in, I'd be thinking about a topic and a poem would come to me and then I'd write, if I wrote a couple lines down, then the rest of the poem would come. I never could read. I'm not a good reader and I'm not a good speller. I can't spell anything. So I would just, when I'm driving the truck, I'll just start reciting poetry. And I can start here and I can drive all the way to Brandon and I can recite poetry all the way to Brandon off the top of my head. Like just, and I can, and it always kind of amazes me that I can do that. But I can do it. Once I start a poem, I can just think of one after another, all the way to Brandon and probably all the way back. This is a poem I wrote a while ago. It kind of depicts, to me anyway, it's kind of my opinion of rural life and I don't know, horses and relationships with the people and friends that you run into along the way. And so the poem kind of goes like this. It's, I have traveled around this old world for a while, and God knows I ain't been everywhere, but I've been to your cities, and I lived on the land, and I breathed me some good mountain air. And I know that the people would never agree on topics and treasures and trends, but in my humble opinion, you cannot compete with warm women, good horses, and friends. Now I know that there's fellas that's more schooled than me, and I know they've long since passed me by, and they built them contraptions of concrete and steel, and rockets that fly through the sky. And I know if you asked them, they would tell you right now that their inventions would come to good ends. But in my humble opinion, you cannot compete with good women, good horses, and friends. Thank you. You know, there are certain words in the English language that you can't make a circle around. And bringing to mind one of those words is shit. Anybody knows that worked with cattle and horses that shit is mighty plentiful when you're doing that. Now, this word shit, some people sort of frown upon it. They think it's a crude term, but it's the only way that I can think of to express the story that I'm trying to tell. Now, a cow has absolutely no inhibitions. She comes into the world naked as a jaybird, and she conducts her life without one morsel of remorse. She will do whatever she has to do at the very time that she has to do it, and if you don't like it, it's too bad. So she just carries on her life. She's not worried about political correctness or anything. And anybody that's ever worked with cows knows that. Now, in this particular poem that I'm going to do, we run into a situation like that. And it's a true story, and it actually happened to me. And the story goes like this. It was a fine summer day. the kind that's good for your soul. Me and young Francis Smith was on foot rot patrol. It had been a long day. My horse needed rest. The sun be a-sinking down low in the west. In a small clump of willows, standing still as a stump, was a crusty old range cow. She is mean, she is nasty, as an ill-tempered drunk. Well, Francis said, we will pop her out there in the clear. I'll catch her up quick. I'll bet you a beer. Well, he missed his first loop. It landed too short. That cow just got meaner, you could tell by her snort. Well, he shook out another, snared her by the neck, and he took up his galley just short of a wreck. I swung a big ragged loop at her heels and her ass. Hell, I missed by a mile. It lay dead in the grass. And 3 times more missing, I snared on her hocks, and I took up my dally and put it on lock. Francis reached in the bag as a matter of course. He grabbed the jug and the syringe and got down off his horse. He said, "Ha, this here cowboy sure is a breeze." He pulled back the plunger. He said, "I'm going to give her 100 cc's. Well, when he's reaching for the head rope, she tried to give him a whack. He said, "Let me get on my horse before you give her the slack." You see, as the problem with us doctors out here on the range is the moods of our patients are prone to change. You can tell an old range cow, this is just what you need. She'll stick a horn in your rump and pay you no heed. Well, the head rope is off her, and she is free to light out. She's deciding that she will just lay there and pout. Francis swung his horse at her, thought he'd roust her a bit. Well, she jumped to her feet. She's a showering shit. She's blowing and bawling. She's rooting his horse, and he's a spurring and flailing trying to get off her course. Well, I'm safe in the saddle, and I'm kind of mildly amused, but the time I spent grinning could have been better used. She's all done with Francis. He give her the shake. She turned and come at me as quick as a snake. Yes, I'm getting old now. I must be getting too slow, 'cause she caught my horse sideways, and off him I rolled, and man, where I landed, she's no feather bed. I got the wind from my sails, and I'm feeling half dead, trying to make my legs move and get off of the ground. I know that old cow is coming back to have the next round. Well, Francis shook out a loop, and it landed just right, and he took up his dally, and that catch rope come tight. That cow landed up about a foot from my toes. She is bug-eyed and crazy, blowing snot from her nose. Well, when I caught my breath and my vision come clear, I could see that old 35 tag in her ear. Thank my God and Francis that I'm still alive. If I got lucky number, sure as hell ain't 35. Well, you might think this saga has come to an end, but if we want back that head rope, we got to catch her hind end. I got back on my horse in pretty much pain. I got no damn choice but to heel her again. This time I got lucky, and I caught my first loop. She flops on her side. She's still showering poop, and I licks her all over from her tail to her nose. I said, "You know, Francis, this cow ain't got foot rot. She got no swollen toes." I don't know if you ever noticed, but a lot of people try to do the best job they can. They try to get the best equipment. They try to practice, and they practice, and they practice. But you know, even with the best equipment and the best practice, there are still things that can go wrong in everybody's life. And this here kind of, it's not just in Cowboy and that happens. It happens anywhere in people's lives. Now, this story is about a situation like that. And it goes like this. I forget how the damn thing starts now. Now, Eddie Brown was a top hand. This fact I'm telling you. He sat in the saddle of a buckskin horse. That horse stood 16'2". And at the catch rope latch of his rope and rig, I'm here to tell you so, was the neat roll coils of a hard twist rope, the best kind you could throw. Now Ed and this here buckskin horse was a team that's hard to beat. Ed seldom missed with that hard twist rope, and that horse could plant his feet. They had snared wild bulls and range-wise cows in that hard twist deadly ring. in this prairie world of wind-blown grass where they rode out like kings. Now down on the ground by a fence post butt that was most near rotted away lay the paper trash of a small wasp's nest. Down in the snowberry brush it lay. All them eggs had hatched in that paper trash, except for one that was white as scum. From that sickly egg out appeared a leg, out a yellow jacket come. Oh, that fly was weak. He could scarce but creep to the top where the snowberries thin. But from that lofty height, who knew where he'd light when caught up by the wind? And the wind caught him, and he sailed like sin. Yes, upward he did scoot, though his legs were weak, and his wings were crumpled like a skid row drunkard's suit. He was wind-tossed and tumbling. His heart was filled with fear. By some mindless twist of unplanned fate, he landed in that buckskin's ear. That buckskin horse is at full stride on the hip of a big old bull, and Ed, he had just thrown his rope. His slack was set to pull. That buckskin bogged his handsome head and upward to the sky, and Ed, he missed his dally rap as he went sailing by. Now Ed, he landed in the dust, he skidding on his chin, and he vaguely mind a bucking horse, and his color was buckskin. That big old bull, he looks on back, he says, oh, what the heck, a $40 hard twist rope is trailing round his neck. So next time you were in a bind and your back's against the wall, and from where you sit it looks to you like you got no chance at all, are you sitting up on your high horse like you're never going to fall? Just bear in mind as the hands of time are slipping slowly by, fate can turn the hand of the biggest man with one yellow jacket fly. You know, as time moves along, especially in my lifetime, like I'm 75 years old, and there's been many changes since I was a child, and as time moves on, technology grows, and things that used to be just a dream of the people are now a reality, like cell phones and the internet and computers and all those things have just, they're actually quite recent. Like if you look back 60 years, none of this stuff existed. Now in this poem that I'm going to do, I'm going to try to bring that fact out. This poem is about a time when if you lived off in the boonies, out in the outback or out in the country, you were pretty much on your own. If you couldn't survive with what you had, then I guess you just didn't make it. Now this poem tells a story about this kind of thing. The story goes like this. Old Jake sat back of the triple-pane glass in the Grassy Butte Seniors' Home. The wind drove the snow through the short dry grass, cruelest weather these plains can bestow. It'll freeze them small critters right there in their tracks, ground drifting and 40 below. Now if you should get caught in a storm like this, take cover and you better lay low, 'cause you will not last long in that wind's wicked song, ground drifting and 40 below. Now Jake looked up at the nurse and he said, "'Tis strange how things come to be, that wind that deals death to folks caught in their breath. Fact is, it brought my life to me." You see, 86 years from this time of year, the weather was fine all around. My mom threw a saddle on her very best horse. She rode 14 miles into town. She had to get there in a hurry, 'cause she knew not what else to do. She might find the doc and some help for her mom, who was down with the old Spanish flu. Well, the weather was fine and she made real good time. Tied her horse in the livery barn. Doc is gone for the day. He'll be back soon, I pray. That flu is sure spreading alarm. Well, she got no choice but to wait, 'cause it's getting real late. So she walks to the Central Hotel. She'd had been a long ride, and she smelled steak being fried in the central small Chinese cafe. Well, a cowboy walked in with a big boyish grin. You can tell he's a man on the roam. He's a shy kind of man who'd lived out on the land. You know he's a long way from home. Well, he nodded hello, and he moved kind of slow, and he sat down 2 tables away. He ordered a plate, and then he leaned back to wait. He said, "Sure has been a mighty fine day." Well, before my mum spoke, that big northern broke, and it blasted them windows with snow. She set down her cup and glancing looked up. She says, "'Pears to me like we's in for a blow." While that wind shook the windows and doors down the street, sent the snow all swirling around. Its long icy fingers crept in every crack, sent shivers of frost through the town. Well, my mother knew well in this wintry hell there is no way of getting back home. She could only pray when she got back that way that her folks would be safe from the storm. Well, there's her and the desk clerk and the old China cook and the cowboy that waits for the train. They were mighty thankful for the Central Hotel while that wind blew its deadly refrain. Well, they played cards and talked round the pot-bellied stove till the storm raged on more than a week. You never say whoa to true love, you know. It can be heard o'er the wind's loudest shriek. It is always alive. It can even survive ground drifting and 40 below. Well, there was no golden ring. Just I'm going to try to get back next spring. Got to see how this war's going to go. Then he boarded the train. Then he kissed her again, and he boarded the train. She just heard the long whistle blow. Well, my mum plowed her horse through the belly-deep snow. Found Grandma had gone to her rest. Grandpa was there. He be stricken with grief, but he's hanging on doing his best. And Tom, the young cowboy heading off to the war, he never did see the face of his son. There's folks that would frown upon a catch colt like me, but I've had a mighty fine run. You see, all the wild flowers don't grow in churchyards. God's saplings don't grow in straight rows. And the folks here that love you, they don't care how you come, ground drifting and 40 below. Thank you. People have great relationships with dogs, and a lot of people think a lot of their dogs. And I'm going to tell you a story about a man and his dog. I know a fellow was walking down the street with a big Doberman dog, and it was a hot day, and he was walking by a tavern, and he thought to himself, you know, I'd like to go in and have a cold drink. He started through the door, and the bartender met him at the door, and he said, "I'm sorry, sir, but you cannot bring that dog in this bar. We don't allow any dogs in this bar." He says, "Look here, mister." He said, "That dog is the best fighting dog in Texas. That dog has whipped more dogs than you ever saw. That dog is the best and the very best fighting dog in Texas. If I brought him in the bar," he said, "it would bring people would flock in here to look at him." He said, "I don't care, sir. You cannot bring that dog in this. You cannot bring that dog in this bar. That is the rule. If you want to come in and have a drink, yeah, you can come in and have a drink, but you have to leave that dog outside." Well, okay. So the guy ties him to the handrail by the step, and he goes in the bar to have a drink. He's having a drink, a nice long cold beer, and the little fellow walks in and he said, "Sir, did you have a dog tied outside?" "Yeah," he said, "I had a big Doberman dog there, and he's the best fighting dog in Texas. He's the world champion fighting dog. That dog has whipped more dogs than you could ever imagine," he said. Well, he said, "That might be," the little guy said, but he said, "I got some bad news for you." "What could be bad?" He said, "Your dog is dead." "My dog is dead?" He said, "Your dog is dead, sir." He said, "What are you trying to tell me my dog is dead? I just tied him out there and he was in perfect health." He said, "I'm sorry, sir, but your dog is dead." He said, How how could my dog be dead? He said, my dog killed him. There ain't no dog in the country could kill that dog, he said. He is the best fighting dog in Texas. He says he's whipped dogs 4 times this size, and he's tore them to pieces. He says there's no dog in the country could kill that dog. He said, well, I'm sorry, sir, but he said, my dog has killed your dog. And he said, I feel bad about it. He said, wait a minute. He said, let's go out and have a look. He goes out, there's his dog laying there dead. He said, see what I told you, your dog is dead, sir. And there's nothing we can do about it. He's dead. He said, how could he be dead? Your dog, how could your dog have killed him? He said, well, sir, he said, what kind of a dog have you got? He said, I have a Chihuahua. You have a Chihuahua? And he killed my big Doberman? He said, yeah, I'm sorry, sir, but he did kill your Doberman. He's dead. Look at him. He's dead. He said, how could he kill him? He said, well, I think he's stuck in his throat.
I like that story.
Yeah. It is a good story.
Yeah.